Welcome to Trial Site News Podcast Series. Today we'll be touching on a tough subject, multiple sclerosis, or MS for short. Now, MS is a potentially disabling disease of the brain and spinal cord. Essentially, the immune system attacks the protective sheath that covers nerve fibers and causes communication problems between your brain and the rest of your body. And eventually, the disease can cause permanent damage or deterioration of your nerves. So, what does this mean? Well, symptoms range from numbness or weakness of your limbs, electric shock sensations that occur with certain neck movements, tremors, lack of coordination, and can cause visions like partial or complete loss of vision. And this just touches the surface of this disease. And so, to talk with us about this, we have a guest, Melanie Rice, who herself is suffering from multiple sclerosis. She was diagnosed back in September of 2019 at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. And since then, she has uncovered an entire community, or more appropriately, a family of thousands of people struggling with this autoimmune disease. She has become an advocate for MS patients, and we here at Trial Site News are honored to have Melanie with us today. And so, Melanie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to jump right into this. Can you tell me, how did it happen when you were first impacted with MS? What happened there?
Well, I started having numbness in my feet probably around 2017, and weakness in my legs. And so when I would put shoes or socks on, I noticed that it felt like, the pressure just it made it even worse. And the weakness in my legs, I love to do gardening, and I couldn't even bend over for long. And then once it was really bad, I could barely walk to the house. So my doctor, my primary care physician, was worried. She brought up MS, and then I was like, oh my goodness. She said, well, don't worry, we'll get an MRI done, and I'm going to refer you to a neurologist. So I went to a neurologist in my hometown here in Huntsville, and went to her for a year almost. And they didn't do an MRI with contrast, it was without. And she totally missed it. I mean, and for that length of time, I was getting worse and worse and worse. The neurologist here said, I don't have an ego problem. So if you want to go to Vanderbilt in Tennessee and see a neurologist, a specialist there to see what's going on, we will. And so she referred me to Vanderbilt, but it was months before I could get in. And in the meantime, I'm getting worse and worse. So when I went back to my primary care physician, she said, you know what, I can get you in the Mayo Clinic in a couple of weeks' time. She said, you'll go down there on Monday, and by Friday, you'll know. And she was right. So I went to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, got there on Monday. They're like a well-oiled machine. I was having MRIs done at almost midnight. And they did them with contrast. And Friday afternoon, I was seeing the neurologist, and I had an enhancing lesion on my brain at the time I was there. It just lit up. And he was kind of disturbed at the fact that my neurologist here couldn't, even without contrast, you could see the gray in my spinal cord and the lesions on my brain. And she saw the lesions, but she said she didn't think it was MS. So I think at first I was like, oh, okay, because he said there's so many medications you can take now that we didn't have all these years ago. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. I don't think I really knew what MS was. I knew of people who had it, but I didn't know what it meant to have MS. And so I came home, and then I went on a trip to Texas, and I came back, and then it was like, I started doing the research, and then I was like, without using the expletive, oh, wow, this is not good. And the reality of it set in. So I started looking on Facebook or Googling and looking on Facebook for MS groups and things like that. And when I finally went to Facebook, I couldn't believe what people were saying. And they were posting suicide hotline numbers and the despair that people were in. I mean, they have suicide plans. And so that scared me even more. So the one good thing about Facebook that I found was the algorithm of me searching for MS groups. Clinica Ruiz popped up, and I started looking into that and what hematopoietic stem cell transplant was, or autologous, and or HSCT for short. And in less than 6 months after my diagnosis, I was in Puebla, Mexico, having HSCT.
Now, can you share with us what the latest standard of care is for multiple sclerosis based on some of the most common conditions?
Well, usually, I mean, well, they give you prednisone to kind of tone down the inflammation when you're having a flare, that or an exacerbation or a relapse. Most of the medications are for people with relapse and remitting multiple sclerosis, which is usually, what is characterized is the beginning of multiple sclerosis, where you have a relapse, but you bounce back from a relapse. And then eventually you go into secondary progressive and then primary progressive MS. And there's different stages of it. And that's debatable because the types of MS were made by pharmaceutical companies. And I don't know the specifics on that, but it was so certain medications could be covered for certain whatever type of MS you have. The more progressive it is, the less supposedly medications work. I'm relapse and remitting, and I was put on Ocrevus. I was given Solu-Medrol, then put on Ocrevus, and I had one infusion of Ocrevus, which to my knowledge was about $75,000. And you have to have those twice a year. So $150,000 for the Ocrevus. Of course, my insurance paid for it, but the medications are extremely expensive. What they're called are disease modifying drugs, DMDs or DMTs, disease modifying therapy. You can say it. We all know what you mean when you say that. That's pretty much it.
Now, you kind of touched on this, your initial reaction once you realized what multiple sclerosis was all about and you got diagnosed. Can you share with our audience what that situation was for you? We know it's hard and it's scary, and I'd like you to expand on that.
It's basically, we are so desperate and feel so hopeless. And like I said, people have suicide plans, and this is not the way of life. This should not be the way. We don't know what's going to happen from day to day, from moment to moment. You could be fine one minute and in a wheelchair the next. And that happened to me with my legs. I was in a wheelchair, but all of a sudden, my legs went numb and started tingling. And my daughter had to put my socks on my feet. And I literally drove myself to the emergency room. And they did another MRI of my lower back and found nothing. So it's not a death sentence per se, but there are worse things in life than dying. And in my opinion, MS is one of them. When I tell people, we need to do something, they say it's helpless. It's hopeless. Nobody is going to help. It's not going to work. It's not going to do any good. They have given up. They feel like people and researchers and doctors and everybody have given up. It's like, well, this is all we have. And I just talked to a friend of mine that's here locally that is at the last of her DMDs. And our neurologist told her, that's it. There's nothing else I can do for you. That's it. So then she's left to just deteriorate and become a shell of the person. And I know people, I talk to people who are there already. They're bedridden And this sounds harsh, but this is what I've heard. Someone said, wheelchair, bed, dead. That's MS. And imagine living your life like that. I mean, I have 4 children. I don't want them to see me like that. I don't want to raise them from a wheelchair or from a bed or a nursing home, because that's eventually where a lot of people end up. Not everyone, but a lot. We need help. We need people who are going to come to our rescue, I guess.
So let me ask you then, where do MS patients go to support each other? Could you share more about this?
Well, because of COVID, they used to have support groups locally. I never went to one because I wasn't diagnosed soon enough, I guess, before COVID hit. But now, a lot of people, they go online. There are several large groups on Facebook, and there's a remyelination page that we all go to and share research. There's really no other place to go except Facebook. I mean, there's an MS group on Facebook. There's several MS groups.
So let me ask you then, and you talked about the hopelessness here. Are there any treatments in the research pipeline that gives people like yourself and other patients hope for better treatment or even a cure?
Well, there are clinical trials for HSCT that have been ongoing for a little over 20 years now. And they have been proven that shows that HSCT is proven to be more effective than disease modifying drugs. And now they're starting to do some of them off trial on a compassionate basis. But the problem is the FDA will not approve this procedure for people with MS. It's been done for cancer patients for decades. A few people are getting HSCT off trial, but most people get in on clinical. If they get in on a clinical trial, the criteria is just ridiculous. And then they have a 50-50 chance of getting HSCT or a disease modifying drug. Well, everybody already knows that HSCT is the best way to go. So those people are offered HSCT at the end of the trial. These trials last years. We don't have years. We needed something done yesterday. MS doesn't stop for a clinical trial.
So let me ask you then, what more do you think could be done to help support MS patients?
We need to funnel money into the most promising researches. Because if you have a cure, per se, or you stop the progression of MS, you stop it, but there's no guarantees that your nerves are going to heal. So if you can get some kind of nerve remyelination to heal the myelin sheath on the nerves, then then you're pretty much healed. I mean, you're cured, and that they have some good research going. I know Tish is one, but we're really watching Tish. Dr. Jen there just did a video that he's been working on the cause of MS for 15 years. So why is this 15 years? Why is the money not being funneled to that particular research? And in the meantime, we need HSCT. To get HSCT, you have to have failed 2 DMDs or disease modifying drugs, and you have to have aggressive form of MS. Well, who wants to get that bad before you get something to stop the progression? And that's also usually the criteria for off trial HSCT that's being approved now. You want it done the minute you're diagnosed with it, before you progress and you have too much damage that can't be undone.
Before we let you go today, and again, I appreciate your time spending it with us here today. Do you have any final thoughts or statement you'd like to share with our audience?
MS does not wait around for research. It doesn't wait around until you can get the money to have HSCT and leave your own country because you can't get it done here. And people are cashing in their life savings and their retirements and refinancing houses and fundraising on GoFundMe, desperate to have a procedure that should be done here. It's time to move HSCT from clinical trials to clinical practice. That is one thing that should be offered now.
Well, Melanie, that's extremely powerful stuff. And we appreciate you taking the time. And hopefully this will raise more awareness about MS, about how it affects people, and push things to move forward.
Mhm.
So, Melanie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.